Hello, I'm Augustine. Welcome back to Beyond the Bubble. This week's advisory is brought to you by the Counselors for Suicide Prevention.
Hi, I'm Miss Davis, one of the counselors here at Alamo Heights. This week, our counseling team will be presenting 4 lessons on suicide prevention. Today, we are going to take some time to talk about stress and depression in teens. Let's watch a short video about it.
Share a high and a low experience from this last week.
A low for me is I had my first anxiety attack like I want to say 3 days ago, so that's stressful.
I've had a lot of friends throughout my life that have really struggled with their mental health, and I felt like it was something that wasn't being taken seriously for people that were young. I do think student stress is getting worse. I mean, the majority of people I know were getting 4 hours of sleep a night, and it's like, I can't have a crisis right now, I'm too busy.
One of the main stressors is academics. The pressure to perform at a very high level academically, the pressure to just be well-rounded.
Being on a sport, trying to get into college. In general, things are more competitive. So there's just been this sort of like ramp up of the expectations and what you need to do to succeed.
It's unfortunate that in an attempt to make sure all of our students are successful, we're forgetting to acknowledge that student health has to come before academic success.
I almost didn't graduate. It was a struggle. I was going to classes and putting my head down and just kind of sleeping through classes.
I myself went through a really hard stage of depression my junior year where I didn't want to come to school and I didn't want to get out of bed.
I've known quite a few people who have been suicidal and have been very close to taking an attempt.
In high school, there's also that stigma or that idea of I need to be strong and happy and cheerful and like fit in.
Kids more and more, they're going home after school and they're isolating in their rooms and they're hanging out on their tablets or smartphones. And there's just this lack of support mixed with this false version of who people are and their success.
We definitely have a culture of perfection on social media, in that we're trying to show our best lives even if we don't feel like we're living it.
It would have been nice if everyone at the school had some sort of idea that it was okay to talk about your problems. Everybody's got something that they should talk about, and they shouldn't keep inside and have to deal with by themselves.
Not everybody can talk to an adult. Maybe they need a peer to talk to, someone their age that might be going through what they're going through or have experience.
In high school, all of the stressful things all mixed together in a pot inside of you, and it's a lot to handle. Because kids are coming into teachers' classrooms every single day, it's important for those teachers to let kids know that they care about them.
It's okay to take that break from your curriculum sometimes to check on your students. You can't teach a kid who is struggling and dealing with depression and anxiety and possible thoughts of suicide.
We talk a lot about resiliency, and one of the things that makes a more resilient student is having an adult who cares about them.
Let's start with stress. What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word stress? Take a few minutes to talk to your classmates about what stresses you out.
Hi, I'm Mr. Harris, the college counselor here at Alamo Heights High School. Some of the answers you may have given to the questions include grades, sports, relationships, parent and peer pressure, school, college, money, and probably this pandemic. Stress impacts everyone in different ways. What does stress look like for you?
I'm sure that you all are having some great discussions. Some of the answers that you may have given are irritability, headaches, stomach aches, trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, binge eating, inability to concentrate, and substance abuse. Life without stress is pretty much impossible. It's how you deal with or manage that stress that makes a difference. What are some positive ways for you to manage your stress?
Some of your possible answers may include listening to music, talking to a friend, exercise, journaling, drawing or doodling, or talking to a counselor or trusted adult. But a little bit of stress is not a bad thing. However, a lot of unmanaged stress over a long period of time can lead to depression. Do you know someone you think might be depressed? If so, what are some of the signs that you see that make you think that? Take just a minute to talk about it.
all get down at some point in our lives. Some possible answers that you may have mentioned include change in personality, acting differently, being withdrawn, weight loss or weight gain, change in friends, not sleeping or sleeping all the time. As we mentioned, unmanaged stress can lead to depression, and if left untreated can result in a person having suicidal thoughts. Our next lesson will focus on warning signs of someone that is having suicidal thoughts. Suicide can be prevented.
Hi, I'm Dawn Hedgepeth, one of your wellness counselors.
And I'm Stephanie Hughes, the other wellness counselor. We are now continuing our discussion about suicide with a focus on warning signs. Mrs. Hedgepeth and I have both been personally impacted by the loss of someone who died by suicide. So we appreciate what a difficult topic this is and how hard it can be to listen to. Yet your attention for the next few minutes could honestly save someone's life. Earlier, you learned about stress and depression. For some teens, part of feeling depressed can also include having suicidal behaviors. Let's now spend time talking about warning signs and identifying teens who might be at risk.
Here are some of the warning signs of suicide that you need to be aware of. When someone we know talks about experiencing unbearable pain, being a burden to others, feeling trapped, having no reason to live, or wanting to die, these are serious red flags. And if their feelings include hopelessness, depression, a loss of interest, anxiety, rage, irritability, and a feeling of humiliation, we need to ask our friend about these feelings. Changing behaviors can look like an increased use of drugs and alcohol, withdrawing from activities, giving away possessions, isolating from friends and family, sleeping too much or too little, looking for ways to kill themselves, such as searching online for materials or means, acting recklessly, visiting or texting people to say goodbye, and aggression.
So why do some teens get to the point of believing that taking their own life is the only option? Let's look at some important risk factors. We can think of it this way. There are some basic underlying causes of suicide. Most teens who are experiencing serious thoughts about suicide are already dealing with at least one or maybe all of these problems, like misuse of drugs and or alcohol, depression or other untreated mental health issues, and any kind of bullying or abuse. This may include physical, sexual, mental, or emotional. For example, if someone is dealing with being bullied, they may turn to drugs or alcohol to distract themselves from their hurt. Yet if that person also has depression, alcohol and drugs can make the condition worse. Then there may be some kind of trigger, a situation that happens in their life that pushes them over the edge to act on their suicidal thoughts.
What are the possible triggers? They generally fall into three categories: family, relationship, and school. What's most important to remember is that there are usually many causes for suicidal behaviors. The thing shared by teens at risk of suicide is the sense of having lost something. When things don't turn out the way you expect them to, you might experience a feeling of loss. For example, if you fail a class or do poorly in a sports activity, the loss might be the loss of connection, self-esteem, or even a feeling of humiliation. Another example might be when you break up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend. The feeling of loss is more obvious, the loss of connection with someone that you care about. We might make assumptions about the loss, like the loss of a boyfriend or the loss of a pet may not be enough to cause someone to feel stressed, depressed, or even suicidal. But we need to understand that the loss experience is very individual for each person. Okay, we've given you a lot of information. Now it's time for us to watch a 3-minute video that summarizes most of what we've learned today.
Do you know what the leading causes of death for young people in the United States is? It's probably not what you think. Accidents, homicides, and suicide. Let's think about that for a moment. The top leading causes of death for young people are all preventable. While we talk about car accidents, we talk about violence, we don't really talk about suicide. And that's a problem. Staying silent about suicide is a problem because it creates confusion, promotes stigma, and it isolates people when they need help the most. Suicidal thoughts are a normal reaction to an abnormal set of circumstances. People become suicidal when they're experiencing a high degree of stress, mental suffering, a high level of hopelessness and despair. It's a way of feeling in control when you're in an uncontrollable situation. Going through a rejection, a failure, or a setback can make all of us feel hopeless, but it's especially difficult if you're a teenager or a young adult going through these experiences for the first time, especially if you struggle with mental illness. The important thing to remember is experiencing suicidal thoughts is temporary. Maybe it'll last days, maybe weeks, potentially even months, but that experience does pass. The danger with suicidal thoughts is making a permanent decision about your life when you're in this temporary state of pain. If you're worried about someone who's acting differently than they usually do, who might seem more withdrawn or more hopeless about the future, ask them if they're experiencing suicidal thoughts. And if you're worried that starting a conversation about suicide might make them suicidal, don't be. Years and years and years of research have shown that asking about suicide does not make someone suicidal. What it does do is make it easier for them to talk about any pain that they might be experiencing. If you are struggling with suicidal thoughts, get connected with support. Talk to a friend or family member that you feel close to, a teacher, a coworker that you trust, or reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. If you don't feel safe, call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room to get immediate support. It takes courage to talk about suicide. It takes courage to ask someone about suicidal thoughts, and it takes courage to get help when you're experiencing suicidal thoughts. But by having these conversations, we can help people get the support they need before they make a permanent decision about their future. Suicide is preventable if we have the courage to break the silence that surrounds it.
If we pay attention to the warning signs, we can get our friends to a trusted adult who can help them. During our next advisory, you will learn more specifically about how you might intervene with someone who is at risk of suicide.
In the meantime, if someone needs help, here are the available resources. At school, we have our entire counseling department. Also remember, family, church leaders, teachers, and parents, they're also options. There is also the crisis hotline. Students, please make sure you have 1-800-273-TALK saved in your phone. Your job is to find resources for the person who needs them, and if possible, to tell the resources how serious the problem is. For example, my friend has been talking about suicide. It is not your job to do the long-term intervention yourself. Remember, if you know the warning signs and know what to do to help, you can prevent a suicide. We are so grateful for your time and attention to this serious matter today. Please know you are never alone.
As a reminder, we have 2 advisories this week, so stay tuned on Thursday where we will continue our discussion on suicide prevention.